So, I want to review the South Park episode Deep Learning. And what I want to say is that, it's another episode where they're definitely just being satirical about contemporary issues. And I've been very, very busy at work, so I don't understand the Chat GTP controversy, just a little bit of it. And I believe it's just that colleges and universities are starting to crack down on people who are either paying people online to write their essays, or they just like enter a couple of words in, write me an essay about Joseph Stalin. You write that in, and then it gives you like a 6 or 7 page essay, and then therefore you get good grades. And also too, they're also talking about in the sense that sometimes there are some apps where you want to have a relationship with somebody, and then you get an AI telling you what speaking for you. And it's kind of interesting because when you look at some films like 2001: A Space Odyssey, where it talks about how AI is going awry, or there's also like a film done a few years ago, I think with Joaquin Phoenix and Rooney Mara, where Joaquin Phoenix has an AI girlfriend in like a futuristic city. I don't remember the name of it. It's directed by Spike Jonze. So I don't remember the name of it, but like how people find artificial relationships. But this is also kind of like what the younger generation is dealing with relationships. That sometimes you just have an AI taking care of what you need to take care of. And, through the episode, Stan uses that with his relationship towards Wendy. And there's a lot of themes, and I'd rather more talk about the themes first. That I really think that when Stan is substituting his relationship and responding to Wendy's text messages by responding to her text messages with an AI, he is doing something really, really bad, which is he's keeping a toxic relationship alive. Because if Wendy is really, really demanding, always texting him nonstop, and she's almost like, well, Bebe is getting texts a lot from Clyde, so I want the same type of my man always being there for me. It's not good because she's kind of almost using Stan, and then Stan's like has to say, you know what, you need to either find another boyfriend that's just can deal with more high maintenance, or you have to kind of learn that I can't respond to everything that you're saying because I have a life, and ultimately it's an inconvenience to always answer every little thing that you're dealing with, because I have a life outside of that. And then the other thing is that there's a difference between responding to your friends. Like I have a friend, Donald, who I may talk to like every 8 or 9 days about life and whatever. That's a good relationship. But I know like I've had anxiety, so sometimes I would talk to somebody that's been a mentor for me like almost every single day. That's not okay. Sometimes with my fathers, something goes on in my life, so I text them every single day. I send them like essayistic messages, like long essays. So maybe there may be one day where they're like, I'm going to respond to it with the AI or whatever. Or the other solution is to say, you know what, baby, Wendy, Stan, speaking of Stan, you know what, Wendy, you have a need to talk to somebody. Maybe you need to see a counselor, and that's not a disrespect. That's just what it is. You just always need a consistent need to talk to somebody. And there's a friendship, and then there's actual obsessive conversations with people. And if I'm not the person for that, and if you want a boyfriend like that, I can't be that, because that's just not what I'm looking for. So sometimes you have to just be honest about that. And then the next thing that I would kind of say is that, very, very, very painful thing in the episode is that Wendy says that something traumatic happened to her as a child, and she's like crying and whatever at the ice cream shop, and Stan's like, you know what? What Wendy says is that Stan in one of the AI generated text messages was saying that actually he went through the same thing as well. So that's another bad thing, because ultimately what would happen, and I hate to go there, but what would happen if she was sexually assaulted? What would happen if she's molested? What would happen if she was a kid in a school shooting? Or what would happen if she was abused? What would happen if she had a relative walk out on her? What would happen if she was sexually assaulted by a relative? I work at a psychiatric hospital, so I hear some of these so sometimes I guess and think that maybe this is what some people have gone through. I don't know. I'm not into anybody's life. And then also too, that sometimes people scream at the top of their lungs, where I work, about what their issues are, and I want to say in this video that if I say the name of somebody in a psychiatric hospital, that is bad. But if I say I hear this story, I hear that story, and I'm keeping it vague in this video, that's not breaching confidentiality. Because I've seen a counselor, and he's kind of said things like, I work with this patient and they have an issue with being divorced. Or I remember like one of my old counselors saying, well, I was seeing this patient, Byron, this patient that I saw lost his wife because he committed a crime in public. So people do talk like that. So I just want to kind of just but I want to just kind of use these examples to be real with you, because honestly, if you have somebody if you have an AI generate something and say, I've been through this, when you don't know what the person's talking about, how is that person going to feel when they actually know that you're lying to them, and then actually you're playing with their emotions? And the next thing I want to talk about is that Mr. Garrison has a new boyfriend, and I'm not sure if they set this up in other episodes. I've seen the streaming wars, I've seen the COVID one. But the thing is that I didn't know that he had a boyfriend. But the thing about it is that he realizes that his boyfriend responded to him with AI generated text, and then Mr. Garrison's boyfriend, I think husband, his living partner, he's working on some desserts, and then he just gets a very, very bad feeling. They do a cutaway, and they're and he's like, oh my god, because he knows that Mr. Garrison. When Mr. Garrison's angry, something bad's gonna happen. Just like with Cartman, you don't want, just like how Cartman gets angry. So that's the other thing as well, that you have to be honest with people and tell them what's up, because then the other thing you realize is that you shouldn't be in relationships with some people if you're using artificial intelligence to substitute, because some people dissected Mr. Garrison, and some people say he's a sociopath, some people say that he's a psychopath, some people say that he may have borderline personality disorder with severe anger and psychotic and sociopathic tendencies. So obviously, I think Rick is his partner or whatever, life partner. I do think that he just knows Mr. Garrison. He's like, oh my god, I know something bad's gonna happen. When he could have said, what, same thing. Mr. Garrison, I don't think we should get to that level of living together or whatever, because I just know your character, but I also know that you need somebody to talk to, and I'm not that person for you. So, it's definitely not good. And then the other thing that is talked about is two other things, which is that Butters, Clyde, Cartman, and Stan all have essays written for them so they can do well in Mr. Garrison's class. And it also kind of shows how some teachers are either lazy or they don't care at all, or they're overworked. So Mr. Garrison is going to just give them good grades and let them pass, when actually they're writing college papers or stuff that's not that's just that's very, very apparent that and questionable. And then the next thing is that also any type of cheating or advantage they do talk about, you're easily going to be found out about. And like we see in South Park, at like the ending of the episode, Stan and all the other characters kind of get away without consequences, because usually when we use AI or other types of technology and we exploit it to our advantage, sometimes it's easy for us to just say, what, we're not doing anything wrong. Or, what about Wendy's feelings? What about Mr. Garrison's feelings? What about Bebe's feelings? What about, Butters, who's going to have, who's going to get the shit grounded out of him? Because the reason why I don't think Trey Parker and Matt Stone wrote them to have any consequences is because when people use technology for their advantage and they exploit it and they use it to be lazy, and they do things like they exploit their relationships or exploit the people that don't work hard, that actually do work hard, because people are using technology not to work hard. I do think what you get is a world without people taking responsibility for their own actions. I just need to do this because it was the easiest thing for me, so fuck you or whatever. I'm not going to take accountability for my behavior. And I think that's why they wrote them not to have consequences for their actions at the end. And I also think that, when you look at it, I think like the way it was written at the end was like ultimately Stan uses technology to get out of it, so he's always going to rely on it. So I do think that ultimately in this world there are people who don't learn their lessons, and Stan doesn't learn his lesson. But I think one thing we like about Stan and a lot of characters in South Park is that somebody like Cartman, he gets figured out. So sometimes the really bad characters get punished, and sometimes they don't. Like, Cartman losing his amusement park, and then Cartman getting away with murder with the chili thing with the Scott Tenorman parents' chili. So I do think that, it's good to have that as an ending where Wendy doesn't punish him, or say, I'm breaking up with you, or Wendy has an emotional breakdown and then he's kind of like, oh my God, I caused that because of my selfishness. It's good because some people don't learn their lessons, and sometimes people just are unaware of giving up a toxic relationship. They're going to just let things keep on going and going and going because human beings are inherently selfish. So I do think that this episode really, really just goes into the AI controversy, but also it really talks about, dysfunctional relationships, and then how if we use AI, and how you don't see the parents in this episode just talking to Stan about, dysfunctional relationships, and maybe he should end it with Wendy, or maybe Wendy needs help. You're not actually learning. So when you substitute relationships for AI, most of the time you're not really learning how to respond to things appropriately, because sometimes you gotta live and learn for life to get better at life. Not just, well, an AI can kind of solve my problems or step in for me. So you got to step in for yourself. So that's what I got from this episode of South Park, and I believe it's called Deep Learning. So that's all I have to say.